do feel free to stay with us and engage us with a little bit of a 7-minute interlude where we analyse some of the commentary and some of the ideas and certainly the inspiration that we've heard over the previous few talks. I mean, I have to say, my mind is racing with different ideas. And I mean, Phil, if it's a case of where we need to be more careless, I don't think that was quite your message. But different ways in terms of interpreting that, but also as well, you know, having respect for people, but also being curious for one another as well. So trying to understand, well, what's going on? What makes somebody tick, etc. How do we work together as a team? And coming on to some of those final points with regards to resilience. Resilience is an interesting word, and people seem to be interpreting it in a myriad of different ways at the moment. And I think one of the kind of the happier ways of interpreting it is, okay, fine, we're going through a massive shift at the moment, but where's the opportunity? Where's the upside? What can we actually embrace from this different world we've been living through over the last sort of 10 months or so? Actually, the world is not going to go back to normal, and it would be a catastrophe if it did, because we would have missed out on so much of that learning. So actually, what does the new world look like? Phil, I don't know if you want to come in and just comment on some of that, or what are the thoughts in your mind?
No, wonderful. And the overwhelming thought in my mind is how overwhelming some of this is. I mean, you've pulled out such a lot there, and to that extent, what a fantastic conversation. Maybe just to sort of follow up on your last point there, which is you know, a signal of hope to say, you know, we've been through some awful times in many ways, and people have died, people have suffered, and businesses have gone to the wayside. And if you're lucky, for most people, it's just been difficult, and, you know, doing a lot of this sort of thing, facing things on Zoom, and feeling quite sorry for ourselves about it. But it has shown us, I think, some of the things that I was trying to push at with this idea of leadership, that, you know, we're not billiard ball human beings that are sort of isolated and capable of surviving without other human contact and interaction for very long. You know, leadership, organizations work because of the interaction between everybody in the organization and what everyone's doing on a daily basis. And I think something like lockdown has shown in stark contrast for me, or has illuminated this idea that, you know, you can't do leadership from a chair through a Zoom screen. It's been so exhausting and so difficult because, you know, we're suddenly faced with the realization that we need each other for this, don't we? I'm counting on you, you're counting on me, and you'll all remember what I had to say about that in the presentation. So that's one of the things that springs to mind anyway, just how interdependent and connected we all are. And I think that's something that COVID has confronted us with, Sarah.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Phil. I think it's something as well. So for the attendees, please do keep the chat coming. So all of our panelists are answering your questions and sparking those ideas. I think sometimes it's being done privately, sometimes it's being done in public, but please do keep all that going. Cassandra, I know that we haven't heard from you yet, and very much looking forward to what you've got to say at the end. But as someone who's been sitting back and absorbing all of this, do you have any comments to make?
Yes, lots. And I'm trying really hard not to give away what I'm going to talk about later. But I think the point that Phil was just making around, you know, suddenly being a leader in a very different environment, actually, I think the past, 8-9 months has really heightened what actually motivates and drives us to some quite extreme levels. And for some people, you know, and even managers now are having to learn how to manage remotely, which is a completely different skill, isn't it? And we were talking earlier on about, you know, I saw some chat around actually some people are promoted because they're technically good, but actually not necessarily supported with the management skills. And I feel it's another case of that are we actually supporting our managers as leaders with those skills to nourish everybody's motivators? So those people that work at home and really have that sense of belonging and wanting to be part of that culture and feeling disconnected from their mates, how are you kind of maintaining that? And those people that are, you know, really worried about security, you know, are you communicating with them enough? And are you actually just even asking them how often you want me to communicate with you? So I think it's about learning how to manage remotely. And I I wonder if we've been asking some of those questions through no fault of our own, because we're all still learning as leaders, aren't we? But I think it's challenging, and a really good point that Phil makes.
No, brilliant. I totally agree with you there, Cassandra. There's no manual on how to do this, and actually there shouldn't really be, because of course every situation depends on its own context. So you can't do this by tick box or some sort of flow chart.
And we're all different, aren't we? Which is what I'm going to talk about later. And we all want different things. So, being a leader is challenging. Being a leader during COVID, wow, my hat's off to everyone.
I think that's true, but I also think that the basic skills that all leaders should have, like getting to know their people and developing them in line with what they are interested in and giving them a sense of meaning, and some of the things I've talked about. Well, I've just started a doctorate in leading virtual teams, and what I've learned from the research so far is actually it's about exaggerating your current leadership skills, but so it's not necessary. I think in terms of management, it requires better communication, use of different technologies, and there are certain things about conflict resolution when it comes to virtual teams, and of course onboarding. So there are a number of kind of professional and technical skills that you need, but when it comes to the leadership stuff, it's the same kind of thing. And I think going back to what you said, Sarah, about the opportunity of COVID, it's shown us that leadership is everywhere. It's in our communities, it's in our organizations. We haven't appreciated it before at all. So we really need to kind of tap into our superior leadership skills, and sort of and also just try not to be as distracted as we have been with the strategic and the operational, because obviously in times of stress and pressure we automatically go there. Let's just remind ourselves about the humanity stuff, reconnect with our people and exaggerate those skills, and that will take us a long way to effectively leading virtual teams. But it's an opportunity.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thanks, Juliet. And just before we come back from our bathroom break, Carolyn, I don't know if you had any final commentary.
I think to pick up on what you've just been saying about remote leading and how different that's been, it's been one of the things I've found when I've been doing some work with leaders online, is that actually what they've needed is just to understand how to interact at a different level. And I think it's interesting, Juliet, that you've said some of the research you're doing is showing that you need to exaggerate things. And so I've found that I've almost been doing what you would think to be basic sort of coaching in leadership around, look, actually, if you're going to have a conversation with somebody about how they're doing, how they're feeling, don't lump it in to a meeting about productivity and your job, and don't ask those questions in an open forum when you've got a team meeting and you start going, oh, how is everybody? Oh, all okay, great. Because everybody says, yes, I'm fine. It's only when you take even 5 minutes out to have a one-to-one with somebody and you say, how are you? And I mean, really, how are you? This is tough. And if you can self-reveal a little bit and say, this is really tough, isn't it? I get really annoyed because my dog keeps coming in and barking every time I'm on a Zoom call. And all you need to do is that little bit of self-reveal, disclosing information, and suddenly the person on the other side of the screen is telling you how they're actually feeling. And that's how we get people to open up. But there's not enough of that happening yet. And that's part of that new skill set for doing the online remote leading, isn't it? Is developing those new, it's like the whole thing with trust. We still have managers who are setting team meetings for 8:30 in the morning online just so they can make sure everybody's up. Well, why?
I know, exactly.
To work from home, and you choose to get up at 10 o'clock and work through till whatever time in the evening. Why not? There have to be some bonuses as well to being able to manage your time a bit differently when you're working from home. So
yeah, that's a great point there, Carolyn, because actually you don't need to work at home in the same way as you work in the office. No. You don't need to wear heels on your feet. Hallelujah. Things like that.
You can wear a blouse on the top and pajamas on the bottom and nobody knows.
And on that note, I'm going to pass back to the man in the waistcoat, to Nigel.
The man in the waistcoat and scuba gear that you can't see. Interesting that point, that several points that have just been made there. I remember back in my days in a business school that had a student who was very very intelligent, very talented, but severely Asperger's affected. And we were trying to teach him how to interact with people in a more social way, because it wasn't at all in his skill set. And so we got him interested in the idea of asking people how they were. And I remember coming back from the summer recess once, when he came to my study and said to me, "Ah, Nigel, how are you?" So I started to tell him how my summer was, and when I turned around, he'd gone. He'd understood.
Believe in what you're asking and listen to what the response is.
Yeah, I see lots of leaders who do that. They'll ask how people are, but they don't actually give a shit or listen to the answer. So then it doesn't really work, does it? Okay, moving on then. Thank you for that.